Welcome. I'm Randy Osborne. You're listening to the Bible Science for Kids podcast from a uniquely young earth biblical creationist perspective. This is Cycle 2, Lesson number 16, Newton's First Law of Motion. But before we start today's lesson, let's do a quick review of our last lesson. Do you recall what are two forms of energy? Answer: two forms of energy are: the first one is moving, kinetic energy. The second one is stored to use later, potential energy. Which kind of energy is stored in the sun? Nuclear potential energy. Which kind of energy is moving nerve signals through your brain? Electrical kinetic energy. What kind of energy is stored in magnetic fields of the earth and compasses? Magnetic potential energy. Now for the toughest one. What kind of energy transforms to what other kind of energy when you shoot an arrow from a bow? Elastic potential energy of the bow changes to translational kinetic energy of the arrow. Good job. Who's proud of you? I am. Now for Series 2, Lesson number 16, Newton's First Law of Motion. Let's make sure we know what motion is before we consider Isaac Newton's first law of motion. In science, motion is defined as a change in the position of an object. If an object is facing a different direction or is in a different location, there has been motion. Motion has a speed, a direction, and a distance involved. These things can be measured by a clock, a tape measure, a speedometer or odometer, and reference to the location of another object. Do you remember what we call the ability to move things? Energy. Anytime something moves, energy is at work, pushing or pulling with a force. Listen to what God's Word says to us in Matthew 28, verse 2, New Century Version. At that time there was a strong earthquake, and an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, went to the tomb, and rolled the stone away from the entrance. Then he sat on the stone. Question: what is Newton's first law of motion? Answer: Newton's first law of motion states that an object at rest tends to remain at rest, and an object in motion tends to continue moving in a straight line at a constant speed unless an outside force acts on it. Sir Isaac Newton concluded that there is a law of inertia, the first law of motion, through a combination of personal study, observations of the natural world, and the scientific work of earlier thinkers. Let's look at the influence of earlier scientists. Newton studied Galileo's and Descartes' work at Cambridge University. Then he built on it. Galileo Galilei had proposed that objects resist change to their motion. René Descartes wrote that bodies in motion, staying in motion unless acted on, though he lacked Newton's mathematical formulation. During the plague years, 1665 to 1666, Cambridge University closed due to that great plague. Newton returned home during that time to think, to experiment, and to discover about light and math and motion. This led to his laws of motion. He had observation and experimentation. Newton carefully observed how objects moved in everyday life. Rolling balls, falling objects like pineapple cans, and the way carts and carriages behaved. He noticed that a rolling object keeps going unless something stops it, like a wall or friction. A still object doesn't move unless it's pushed. These observations support the idea of inertia, the tendency of objects to keep doing what they're already doing. Then he came up with a mathematical formulation. Newton was not only a great observer, but a brilliant mathematician. He used math to express motion in clear, specific terms. This led to his first law of motion. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion, with the same speed and in the same direction, unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Newton had faith in the divine order. Newton believed that the universe was created by a rational, thoughtful God who made it operate by consistent laws. His deep Christian faith helped him to trust that nature could be understood through logic, math, experimentation, and observation. He saw his first law of motion, the law of inertia, as part of God's design, stable, orderly, and discoverable. As Isaac Newton once wrote, the most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. Why do you lurch forward when the driver of the car that you're in slams on the brakes? Your body, moving inside the car, has inertia. It is moving and wants to keep moving forward. Even though the car stops, this inertia, Newton's first law of motion. Why does your body eventually stop? It is acted upon by an outside force, like the seat belt or the seat in front of you. What will your moving bicycle do on flat ground if you stop pedaling your bike? Your bike, moving across flat ground, has inertia. It is moving and wants to keep moving forward even though the pedaling stops. This is inertia, Newton's first law of motion. Then why does your bike eventually stop? It is acted upon by an outside force, like brakes or friction. Did you ever see a magician quickly pull a tablecloth out from underneath dishes? And the dishes stayed there. The dishes tend to stay at rest due to inertia, even when the cloth moves, as long as there's not too much friction. Let me tell you about some inertia experiments that you can try at home if it's okay with Mom. Once you hear the one you want to do, pause the podcast and see what you can do. With permission, wet a bar of soap and slide it across the bottom of a wet bathtub. Once in motion, that bar of soap keeps sliding until friction or a collision stops it. With permission, slide an ice cube across a clean, smooth countertop in the kitchen. Low friction, clean and smooth, allows the ice to keep moving until another force stops it. Lie down on bed or on the couch until you figure out what forces can get you moving. Your body stays at rest until you and or gravity act on it. Go ahead, do your experiment if you want to. Experiment with inertia. Turn it back on when you come back. Welcome back. Want to hear what Isaac Newton said about the motions of the planets? You remember them: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Isaac Newton noticed that they were moving, and guess what he said? The motions of the planets require a divine arm to impress them. Isaac Newton, the man that most scientists today think was the smartest scientist to ever live, said that they are moving because God pushed them. Today's question was, what is Newton's first law of motion? Answer: Newton's first law of motion states that an object at rest tends to remain at rest, and an object in motion tends to continue moving in a straight line at a constant speed unless an outside force acts upon it. Listen again to what God's Word says to us in Matthew 28, verse 2 of the New Century Version. At that time there was a strong earthquake, and an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, went to the tomb, and rolled the stone away from the entrance. Then he sat on the stone. Thank you for listening to the Bible Science for Kids podcast from a uniquely young earth, biblical creationist perspective. I hope to see you next time for Cycle 2, Lesson number 17, Newton's second law of motion. Until next time, this is Randy Osborne reminding you to keep trusting and serving the Lord.